Welcome back, everybody, to a very loud episode on Andertons TV, where Chris from PedalPawn joins me today to talk about fuzz pedals, particularly the fuzz face, right?
My favourite. His
favourite. Now, Chris, why are you our nominated expert today on the fuzz face?
God knows. Well, we've spent many years trying to perfect the circuit, which is a very simple circuit, but they can sound so different, which we'll probably hear today. So,
well, look, Chris, he's being very modest there. Yeah. So Chris has gone through a zillion fuzz pedals and tube screamers, which is another video. So please like and subscribe, because the video we're doing after this is the sort of same thing, but about oldie-woldy tube screamers and stuff. But I thought we'd do the fuzz face. Now, my knowledge of fuzzes is nothing like as deep as Chris's, but I kind of know, the mythology of it all is, the fuzz was the first ever sense that, of a compact pedal. There's all sorts of myths around it being a sort of a happy accident in a studio in America. But the first kind of licensed thing that you could buy was called the Maestro Fuzz, licensed to Gibson, sold in the sort of mid 60s. And then, a bit like Marshall was sort of invented over here, or was manufactured over here because it was so difficult to get Fender amplifiers. Companies in London particularly, but in the UK, did their versions of the Maestro to supply a growing demand from all the sort of UK-based guitar players like Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and stuff like that. So the best known of the UK-made early fuzz pedals would have been the Tone Bender or the Fuzz Face.
Definitely the best looking one, surely.
Yeah, so the Dallas Arbiter, I was very lucky. When I was cutting my teeth at Andertons, I met Ivor Arbiter,
right?
Who started, I think he owned the Soho Soundhouse guitar store and started the Arbiter distribution group, who were a big distributor back in the day for brands like Fender. Anyway, he kind of came up with this, and I think wasn't the original inspiration the bottom of a mic stand?
Yeah, because it's circular. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess he's called it the fuzz face because it looks like a face, right? By
the way, people say that's one of the most genius marketing plays of like the past 50, 60 years, because people want them just because they look cool, don't they? It's like they've cracked it with that. So
I think there's a certain something about all the like the Maestro design, all the Octavia kind of things. They were. The reason I'm struggling here is to show you. It always makes me laugh how excessively enormous all the pedals were back in the day to house what ultimately inside was not a lot.
7 components.
So let's show you. Right. Oh, here he says breaking this one. So there you are. That's what an old fuzz face looked like. Can you see that one? Shall I go hold this up to camera 7?
All good.
So yeah, I mean, literally, did you say 7 components in it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8 or 9 components, couple of pots, all hand wired onto a bit of board, running off of a simple battery. There's no on and off light. There's no mains power. It's just old school.
Yeah.
Tell us, what's the provenance behind this grey one here then? Because you said that's the old. It's in amazing condition. You're saying that's the oldest one you've got, right?
Well, this is the replica that Dennis Cornell, who was an original engineer with Ivor. I used to work for Ivor, and he's reissued this himself in recent years, and that's why it looks so new, because it's not. But this is based on the 1966 fuzz face,
right? And
this actually uses old AC 128 transistors, which were supposedly in the very first fuzz faces. I don't think there's ever been. I think there's been one unit found that might have them, originally, but they very swiftly moved on to NKT 275s, which is the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail. All right, so the whole point of this video is to look at some of these early fuzz faces and compare them to some of the modern replicas of fuzz faces. Or specifically, we've got 5 fuzz faces here that you guys voted for in a recent YouTube poll that we did that you wanted to hear. So there's a little mini fuzz face from the guys at Dunlop. There's a JHS Smiley, which came out, I forget what the series of pedals was called. Was it the Legends of fuzz. Thank you, Oz. But yes, he made a few different fuzz replicas. We've got the Boss FZ1W, who, as is Boss's way, claim this is not a clone of anything. It's simply inspired by that kind of era of fuzz. It probably is a clone. MXR Classic 108 fuzz,
That's right.
which is the silicone version of the old big fuzz face. Another JHS pedal, Series 3 one, which again is another one of those ones which is sort of, it's not...
Yeah, it's based on an MK 1.5 tone bender, which was derived from the fuzz face, wasn't it? So it's like, yeah.
And then we've got this unobtainium priced Texas Square Face by Diaz pedals, which is like a modded fuzz face, which inspired the PedalPawn original fuzz. All right, so we're going to have a play with all of these pedals at some point, but let's get into the fuzz face first. This one I'm very, very excited about. Who did you buy this from, Chris?
Mr. Eric Johnson.
Oh, this is a genuine as used by Eric Johnson of all those kind of crazy myths about tone. So we'll plug this in as well. We've got two amplifiers that we're using today. We've got a Marshall SV20H into a 212 cab, and we've got a Fender Deluxe Reverb into a different 212 cab. The Marshall, I think, has got vintage 30s in it, and the Fender's going into a cream backloaded cab. With no pedals, they sound like this. So give us a bit of Marshall. And the Fender sounds like this. So, as you can see, we're trying to sort of go something that's a little bit more vintage and breakup, and another one that's a bit more crystal clean. And we're going to use that same setup as well when we do the Tube Screamer, which is going to have a very Stevie Ray Vaughan vibe to it, as you might have guessed by the fact that Chris has bought all of his Stevie Ray Vaughan inspired guitars with him. So, fuzz. I feel like, unlike normal overdrive and distortion pedals, when it's sort of, you switch it on, you switch it off, it does a fairly consistent thing. It's quite easy as a guitar player to find pedals that you like that then work in multiple sort of situations and setups. Fuzz is kind of like no two are the same, and then you change, you change a guitar or you change an amp or you, I don't know, change a battery, and all of a sudden the bloody thing sounds like a different pedal.
Well, we were talking about this on the way here. Like, even if you get the exact same components, there's a 20% tolerance difference anyway. So you've got that to contend with as well. There's so many different variables.
So you either lean into that and you love it, and you love the sort of chaos almost of fuzz, or I think a lot of people, it just puts them off. So
that's why you need 7, though, isn't it?
So I guess you can decide throughout this video which camp you're in. But let's start playing with this. So typically speaking, players of the era would have done what? Just everything on full?
Well, yeah, a good place to start is whack both knobs on full, and then,
which is what they are.
Yeah, tailor it back to suit then after that.
Okay, so we've got a volume and a fuzz. Now, again, if I remember rightly, there was no real sense on these early pedals that you got much volume boost. It was just almost everything had to be on 10 to be sort of the same kind of volume, wasn't it? Or a smidgen extra. So let's just have a little listen with this. So here's without. It's so instantly the right vibe for, I suppose, the Fuzz Face's most famous user of all time, which we've not mentioned yet. But yes, so, Jimmy, I guess, and we're talking of the Hendrix variety as opposed to the Page variety, who was a similarly famous but more tone bender user. So yeah, it's just, that's the sound, right?
It's the sound, yeah. You can't beat it. It's such a simple setup, isn't it? But it's just undeniably Hendrix.
So let's start seeing what happens if we dial back some volume and fuzz stuff. So let's see. You play and I'll just dial. there's no real sense that the volume clearly turns the thing up and down. The fuzz control is doing next to nothing for at least half of it. So, but you're saying
I was trying not to touch the volume then because I knew it was going to influence that. But
so you're saying what you love about the fuzz face over the tone bender is what happens on the volume of the guitar, right? So
it's almost like its own instrument in itself because you've got to learn how to interact it in a very visceral way. It's like
let's hear what you mean by that. Then.
Okay. So full out, it's just crazy. So. You roll it back to about 7 or 8 on the guitar's volume and it just goes. It's just
huge difference.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of the fact all we've done so far is play it into the Marshall. So let's just play it into a very clean amp. So here's your sort of reference tone of no pedal, if you give us a strum. It suits the Marshall so much better, I think, because there's so much less bass on the Marshall naturally.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very difficult to. There's no real note clarity or anything with this on full into the Fender.
Yeah.
Maybe different Fender amplifiers. If we had something maybe like a Champ or something that was just a smaller cabinet and just a lower.
That's my
wattage
ideal. I love to just crank a small Fender, and, dimer fuzz into it. But
so perhaps again, not necessarily the greatest pairing here.
As we were talking about just before off camera though, we were saying how running a fuzz face into a clean amp is a totally different sound to a cranked amp, and neither one is better or worse, but it's more of a real bitey sort of crazy sound when it's into a clean amp, but when it's into a rocking sort of cranked up amp, it's a total.
That was the. Supposedly, if you're all wondering, I wonder what that sounds like. If you go back and listen to Satisfaction, one of the first big Rolling Stones hits, that is supposedly Fender Twin with a Maestro fuzz in it.
Yeah, which goes against everything that you get taught about fuzz faces.
Okay, so we're going to move away from this now and try. We've got two sort of oldie ones here that we might have a play. We've got to hear. Oh, I've broken it. Sorry. We've got to hear the. Well, I saved the Eric Johnson one just to keep you guys. Tell me about this red one. You were a bit like reluctant to plug this in because you weren't 100% sure, kind of like.
Well, often with these old units, they would just sort of throw together whatever parts they had laying around, and these transistors aren't the ones that people talk about. They're not like the BC108s, they're not the BC183s, and it's this is classic what you'd find in an early 70s fuzz face though. So it's like it's what you should expect if you're going to buy an old fuzz face. It's not necessarily the best, but it is still a fuzz face.
Well, let's have a little listen. So I think we're on the Marshall.
Did we put a battery in this one?
Aren't we? I don't know. Did we? Let's find out.
Not sure if there's a battery.
No. Excellent. And now, avec le batterie, everything on full again. Here we go. Without, I think.
Yeah.
Is it without? I don't know.
Yeah, you can see what I mean. That it's not the same vibe, is it?
It's not the same vibe. It's more fuzzy. Than sort of. This is my favourite thing as well. In the comment section below, please write all of your favourite, completely nondescript, descriptive words for guitars that would, for a non-guitar player, would mean nothing at all. Chewy and
glassy
transparent and all those kind of things. Yeah, it's.
The cleanup. Did you notice how it wasn't powerful? It almost lost its. It's almost like rolling down your normal guitar.
Yeah. True.
So, by the way, that's the noise that I was on about. I'd sort of prefer the actual amp tone to that, whereas the magic of a good fuzz face should be you want to roll down your guitar's volume knob just for that cleanup, but this doesn't seem to do it. But yeah,
fine.
See, I prefer that.
With the Fender, let's have a little listen. It's the drop off in volume when you take. It's almost unusable, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah.
Okay, that was just a bit of fun. Now we're on to the Eric Johnson one, which I wonder. Could somebody comment? Is Mitchell Music Center at 14616 Southwestern Avenue in Posen, Illinois? Is that still going? Because that's where this was bought from, if it was. Look, I can see Oz is looking it up now. How cool is that?
But by the way, when we bought the Fuzz, it came with a battery in it, and I was like, this could be Eric Johnson's own battery. So I was like, I'll put it in a little glass case, you know.
So obsessed. It's like, I just bring this battery out for the one where it's, you know, it's like only for the good pedals.
I should have bought it today, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole other Andertons TV. It's tone batteries. Yes, we were talking again before of all of the
quirks,
all of the Eric Johnson kind of myths there are around tone, and you know, if you're talking specifically about fuzz faces with Eric Johnson, again, not only is he also very choosy about which ones he likes, the whole battery thing is completely true and actually very reasonable, right? In terms of absolutely the different, you know, an old battery with a fading voltage will sound different to a new one.
Well, so much so that a lot of power supplies now have a sag feature so that you can replicate that sound. But
this is interesting because the other interesting sort of myth about Eric Johnson is he thinks he can tell the difference between when the back is on the pedal and when the back is not on the pedal. But there is some method to his madness, right? In that germanium transistors are quite unstable with regards to how they perform at different temperatures. So I suppose if you take the back off and it perhaps gets a little bit more air to it and becomes a bit cooler, it's perfectly reasonable to suggest that the component may perform slightly differently.
That's right. But the only thing is, though, he does use silicon, so it's like
so I've made that up.
But I'm just thinking, like, maybe he had that with the older fuzzes he was using, and then when he transitioned to the silicone, he was
I mean, Chris is the expert. So, we talk about germanium transistors and silicon transistors, and you were saying that the sort of the timeline there is that germanium was the sort of the original technology, but because they were a little bit more unstable, manufacturers moved towards using silicon transistors, and then we got the consistency and the stability improved. But it then became some people prefer the sound of the old germanium ones, and so nowadays, of course, you know, you've endless forums and topics on which is better.
I mean, you hear stories of Hendrix literally sorting through 20 or 30 vintage fuzz faces and just throwing them, you know, in. And this is the thing: a lot of my old mates who are like 60 or 70, they talk about these horror stories of, like, you know, fuzz faces being thrown into skips because they're just not of any value to anyone. So and Hendrix went through that same problem, so that's why the silicon transistor was you know the new staple.
There you are. And now Josh Scott owns all of. He found that skip. That's where he got them all from. He spent another year, like Indiana Jones style mission to find it. All right, look, play White Cliffs of Dover, note for note, perfectly. We go back into the Marshall. Oh, what have I done wrong here?
That's right.
Oh, that's weird. I swear it's a battery. There you go.
I hope you're going to keep that in.
Is this an official Eric Johnson approved brand of battery? The Bal Sheng? I'm guessing not. Oh no, there was a battery in it, but it just wasn't plugged in. That was why.
That's why. Yeah.
That'll do it.
Oh gosh. Okay. God knows where the cut point is here. I'll just switch it on and we'll see what happens. That's way more nuclear than either of these. Why is that then?
It's such higher output. It's just that's all it is, really. It's just like on steroids, you know.
Oh, so but that is the silicon one, right?
That is silicon. It's BC183, so that's mental, isn't it? That's crazy.
I kind of feel like I can't pass up the opportunity to have a quick go. I can't play any Eric Johnson stuff or anything. If it's okay, I'll make
it's a horrible chance to play, but
it's all right. Totally out of tune, but that's okay.
Wow.
It's an experience.
That, yeah.
You know, it couldn't be any further from like, you know, a tube screamer or a blues breaker or anything like that. It's just you gotta let yourself go. Right, so they're the originals. Now we are playing with the modern day. I mean, just out of interest as well, what would something like that go for on eBay?
Without the connotation of someone.
So with no provenance at all. So just an original 60s fuzz face.
I always talk to Paul about this. I'm so jaded now because I used to buy these things for like £500. In the last few years, they've gone to triple that.
Right.
So it's not for the faint-hearted.
And if you had some provenance behind it, like the Eric Johnson one, is it like double again or more maybe?
Yeah, you really don't know. I mean, if someone wants to make me a nice offer,
okay. So we're roughly-ish saying you could go and buy one of these on eBay for £1,500, something like that. But the pedals we've got on the top here, I think, are mostly around about the £100 mark. The PedalPawn one's probably a little bit more, and I imagine the Wazza Fuzz one's probably a bit more as well. But hey, links will be below for you to go find out. So now I'm going to plug these in using mains power, which it's a regulated 9-volt supply, so should emulate kind of using a nice new battery. But before I get into this, I'm not chaining them up because I'm sort of, I don't really understand, and I'm hoping Chris is going to help us out here. I don't really understand this whole like buffer, non-buffer, why is it bad to have something in front of a fuzz, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, well, the main thing is, for example, if you plug that Boss in front of a pedal with the kind of impedance that a fuzz has, it totally messes up the cleanup for one. So you really can't get that cleanup anymore. So you want to avoid using any buffer before a fuzz.
Only before. So it's
yeah,
okay
afterwards is absolutely fine. Yeah, you can do absolutely anything.
So typically, then, if you were using a fuzz as part of a group of pedals, what do you call a group of pedals? Like a pride, a herd of pedals. Does it matter if you have a wah? Do you go fuzz then wah wah or wah then fuzz, or doesn't it matter?
Both get different results, but I like to go fuzz first.
Because is there a buffer in a wah wah?
There tends to be that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would typically want to go fuzz first into the wah wah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, but experiment, right? Okay, so I guess we've started with the Series 3, which is the one that has probably the. It doesn't mention anywhere in its manual about fuzz face provenance, talks more tone bendery, but you voted for it. So maybe you've read somewhere on a forum that it is kind of fuzz facey. I don't know, but let's have a little listen. Oh, it's going well. I mean, tuner's on, that's why. Oh, bitch, by the way, the tuner is after the fuzz, so the buffer in the tuner won't be affecting things. Something is though, isn't it? That's what's affecting things. Another bit to edit out there. So very different. All right, I'm not really hearing fuzz facey things at all.
No, that was all gated.
We've got a bias control on here, and the more I turn it up, the more it's sort of starving the pedal of voltage. Where do you think that? Because you know, old fuzz pedals wouldn't have had such a thing as a bias control. Is that almost replicating a battery dying, or were there fuzz pedals at the time that perhaps had a different kind of bias?
I think sometimes you would get a fuzz face off the shelf and it might sound like that as stock, that's what I mean about the Hendrix stories of, it's just, you know, but that application can be used for some interesting context. You know, you could, for example, like it sounded like a trumpet at the start. It's like you might want to. That's why pedals like ZVEX actually have these controls as well. You know, adjusting all of the different resistors and you get totally different context.
Well, let me show you what I mean by that. So if I turn the bias up, that's this sort of trumpet sort of vibe, I suppose. the world's worst trumpet player. But it's not Miles Davis, that's for sure. But okay, let's see. Let me start turning this down. I actually quite like this. I think if I was, what I do like about fuzzes probably are maybe some of the heavier fuzzes that, and we talked a little bit about that, didn't we? About that sort of evolution of fuzz over that first 10 years of, particularly things like when Big Muff came out. It became
a wall of sound, isn't it?
Yeah, wall of sound is. I think that's a good term, isn't it? But it's very different. It's not fuzz face or tone bendery kind of territory. Anyway, so with the bias down, we get the sort of the fuller, fatter fuzz. So. I really like that. Let's try it through the clean Fender amplifier. It's still a bit flubby on the bass end, but it's humongously more usable than any of the vintage fuzz faces we've got here. So that's good pedal, right? But we'll move on. I didn't choose that first for any reason, but it kind of feels like it's sort of good to get it out of the way if it is the least sort of fuzz facey. But we might as well, whilst we're talking about Josh's pedals, we might as well do the Smiley, which he has. I mean, even the casing of it is sort of indicative of pedals of that era, really, isn't it? I know it's not
God, cheese
round. And what have we got on the back? It's got volume and fuzz, same as what we've got on the. And then we've got two modes, which I forget what they do, but we'll try them both. 1969 in London. Remember what that was like, Pete? He's gone to sleep.
1969.
I thought so. Right. Okay. So back into the. Go on. I will have a little dabble after this, but I'm kind of interested because this is the one where we're going. How close is it to the fuzz face? So the two modes, the in mode is clearly again goes into that more spitty sort of fuzz than when the mode switches out. Still not hugely reminiscent for me of any of the fuzz faces that we tried, but half of me thinks here's the kind of the fun / frustration of fuzzes, right?
That's the thing, and someone might buy that and much prefer it than the old ones. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
I do. I'm not saying I don't like it compared to the old ones. I'm just saying it doesn't massively remind me of. Perhaps we should go back and plug that. Which would you say is the? Should we use the grey one as the?
That's probably
indicative?
a good benchmark. Yeah.
Okay, so after this we'll go back to that, and maybe it's closer than I remember. But try and do the rolling off volume thing. See if you get that sense of. Again, not really, does it?
No, I wonder if it...
So the mode switch off is normal, smiley fuzz face. Mode switch in is like... Okay, so we're using it mainly with the mode switch off. Let's try it into the Fender amplifier. Let's go back to this one again and just see. It doesn't really feel like it was enjoying having the volume turned down on the guitar.
It almost doesn't make much difference, and then
disappears completely, does it?
Yeah, it goes into that craziness we was talking about on the last episode. Actually, it goes crazy, doesn't it? When it's
Okay, let's try this now. Yeah, I mean, I really like this one, and I think less so this one. Pardon me. We shall just quickly, whilst it's fresh in your memory. Okay, go again. Yeah, it's not as dissimilar as I maybe thought. And again. What are we giving the Smiley? Not as a mark out of 10, but as a how close are we getting? Consensus in the room? 75%?
Yeah, 70%. Yeah.
70, 75%. It's more spitty.
It's more spitty and it's got a bit more of a gated sort of
Yes.
zonk-esque sort of.
Zonk-esque. All right, look. Literally, look at that. That's what you want, isn't
Oh, that's
it?
what you want, yeah.
That's what you want. It's a little mummy Fuzz has just given birth to the baby Fuzz. Here it is. So let's
We
have a
actually
look.
on Father's Day we posted a picture of those two. It's like no context.
So here we go. Now, tell me, the red one is the Germanium.
That's
one,
right.
Okay, so
this should be, in theory, as close as they could get to this without,
in theory. All right, well, here we go. Let's have a little listen.
I love that. That's got that extra juice to it.
I'm gonna say it is closer. Although again, we'll get a consensus in the room. Go. There's still more gain in the red one, isn't there? Like more fuzz.
And that transcends on through when you're rolling down the.
Yeah, I wonder if I just back the fuzz down a bit here. Go again.
I like that a lot.
Yes, this isn't a competition, but if you're wanting something as close to this fuzz face as possible, I think the red one so far is the winner. Let's hear it through the fender. We haven't heard that yet. Another little, not urban myth, what's the right word? But there's a lot of people have a preference as to single coils over humbuckers for fuzzes.
That's right.
And I have yelled the goat here, or not the goat, the OG. My very first ever decent guitar that I owned. Some would say it's not decent, I like it. Anyway, so this has got a Seymour Duncan Jazz and a JB in the bridge. So see what this sounds like. I don't think that sounds bad. That's into the Fender. Let's go back into the Marshall. This is the humbucker in the bridge. I think we've dispelled the myth that humbuckers don't sound any good with fuzz pedals. I think that sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Have that back. Right, okay, so again, I know we're not trying to choose a winner, but in this competitive world that we live in, I think we're putting that over here for the time being. Obviously, the PedalPawn will beat them all. Otherwise, Chris is going to leave. He's going to stomp out the room in a huff.
Then it's going to be the Germanium silicon debate, isn't it?
Well, this is true. Right, so here we have the classic 108 fuzz. Now, I know it's in a rectangular box rather than a round box, but you're basically saying that if we had the silicon version of this...
Yep. Well, certainly the old, if you guys have seen the Jimi Hendrix Signature Edition, the big round version, that is the exact same circuitry as that, but compacted into a small
with
box.
now an option to switch on and off a buffer.
Aha.
Why would you do that?
It's
I mean,
sacrilegious.
is it because some people just need a buffer to have, you know, if you're running long cables and blah, blah, blah? We'll see what it sounds like with the buffer in and out. So we're on the Marshall still. Let's have a little listen to this. Why did I hear just a smidgen of octave coming through there? Or have I completely... Is that just because you were playing Hendrix
It might be.
riffs and-
Sometimes with silicon, it can give those overtones of what a like an octave would do. So
I liked that a lot as well. I mean, fair play. There's a MXR are doing well in
Yes.
this shootout. Is this Dunlop or MXR? It's the same company, isn't it? Right? They just put different. That's Dunlop. That's
Yeah.
MXR.
And to think about how hard it is to mass produce a fuzz face of this nature, especially the Germanium one, they've definitely cracked it in terms of how good that sounded. Yeah.
So let's see what this sounds like with and without the buffer. Let's see what this is all about. You can definitely hear a smidgen of extra top end with the buffer in.
Yeah.
But does it bugger up your sense of, you know, if you want to roll the volume down, does it feel like it's...
I didn't notice much of a difference. Should we try
Okay.
it?
Wow. Right. We've got one more fuzz pedal to do before we're going to go on to the PedalPawn ones. That's another good pedal. I mean, crikey, I kind of, in my head, there was always this, just because Germanium's older, there was always this like, so therefore it's better, and everybody always bangs on about NOS Germanium transistors and stuff like that. And I wonder whether or not I'm sort of feeling like, is that all just another one of those urban myth things, and actually there's no better or worse, it's just, you know.
Yeah.
How dare you?
We've had this chat quite a lot. A lot of people say how the Germanium cleans up way better, but we've always found silicons to be the best cleanup in our eyes. So it's interesting how different myths can be dispelled in your own ears.
Germanium, you tend to get a warmer sound, and when you roll it off, you get a different sound to a silicon, isn't it? So that's
Yeah, a bit
my
like
main differences.
a bit like how that one was. You roll it back and it's not very prominent, whereas that Germanium Dunlop one was still in your face, wasn't it? You know.
Well, let's have a little look. It would be super helpful, Oz, if you would look up what the V and the M mode do on this Wazercraft fuzz pedal. Right, we're in the V mode now, and we're still in the Marshall. Here we go. That chewy thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's. I wouldn't have said it was hugely reminiscent of the Fuzz face, but it was. It's in the right ballpark.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But do you think it sounds more like a different Fuzz?
To me, it leans into that territory of almost like a Big Muff sort of style sound to me. I'm not sure.
It's like a slightly heavier Fuzz.
Yeah, I feel like you could use that if you don't mind popping it back on. You could use it for this sort of stuff here, where it's just wall of sound.
Still in the Marshall.
I feel like
It's very clean, isn't it? As in, quiet, not too much
actually,
background noise. Into the Fender, and then we'll try the M mode. I quite like it.
Yeah.
I think again, it's just another. All these fuzz pedals have just this. They each have this own really interesting character. And I think it's an inspiring, it's just going to make you go, oh, I'm going to play that differently. I'm going to sort of play into the pedal rather than just whatever I want to do. So anyway, that was the V mode, which stands for vintage, I guess. What does the M mode stand for? Modern? Modern. Okay. Modern Fuzz. What was the song? Modern Fuzz. Who's that band? David Bowie. There we are. Right. Okay.
It cleans up really nicely, actually.
Can I switch between modern and vintage just whilst you're playing? Into the Marshall now. Let's just see what happens here. Wow.
It had almost more of a saturated sound with the Marshall, if that makes sense.
I'm putting this over with the JHS Series 3 as not terribly reminiscent of these, but actually probably more likely the fuzz pedal I would buy. I really like that almost sense it's going into feedback as you're playing the notes.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Which mode did you prefer?
Modern, I think, which is very not like me.
I feel like even whatever pedal it is, if it's more vintage and modern, I have to go vintage just for my own.
So, Chris quickly went, hang on, I think I've got the wrong square face. So he's handed me a blue one with yellow writing. Why is this different to the black one with red writing?
This one would have been hand built by Cesar Diaz himself.
Right.
And then later on, one of his guys sort of carried on the company when he passed away, sadly. So I felt like we should
owe it to him. All right. Are they componently the same?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So it's probably not.
Fine. Well, we're absolutely in honour of Cesar Diaz.
A bit like
we should use the one that he made.
You're just flexing now.
Now, okay, look at that. So they're not quite exactly the same, as this one only works on a battery, whereas this one works on... Will it have a battery in it? We'll find out. Sort of... no!
I'm so sorry.
Wow! Look at that.
That's old
piece
school.
Of quality bit of underfloor. What's this?
Insulation.
What is it? No, it's like underlay, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's right,
carpet underlay. Yeah. What are the mods that we should be expecting to kind of hear over the fuzz face?
Okay, so this was the circuitry that Cesar Diaz would have modified for Stevie Ray Vaughan when his fuzz faces were dying. That they were not reliable. They were also not temperature tolerant, which is one of the key things. And also, the main aspect for me is the cleanup with the guitar's volume knob. You might hear that it's a lot different to the other ones because it's more glassy. Talking about those words that don't make me anything. It's more glassy. It's like such a chimey, glassy sound.
So this was handmade by the man who would have made Stevie Ray Vaughan's pedals.
Yeah, he was Stevie Ray Vaughan's amp tech, and spent many years, knows all the secrets.
So I've now touched something that potentially has also been touched by the same pair of hands that would have touched Stevie Ray Vaughan at some point. Right?
That's right.
What is that like? The 3 degrees of everything. Anyway, so are we Fendery or Marshally for this kind of vibe?
Maybe Fendery to start off with, I think.
All right, Fendery. Here's our clean tone with nothing. Do you know what? Do you know how you made this sound most Hendrixy and most Stevie Ray Vaughan-y? It's just play Hendrix licks and here's Stevie Ray Vaughan licks on this. Wow, I don't know if what Stevie Ray Vaughan song or tone or era would you go? Because I don't
quite hear it.
Hugely recall that kind of fuzzy.
Well, here's the thing. I get why you'd think that, because most of his studio albums were very tube screamer, Fender amps. This was towards the later end of his career, so you'd hear this on his live performances, which was a bit more raunchy. And also his In-Step album was full of this effect. And to me, I can just hear that clunkiness of the volume roll down. It's just so synonymous with the later Stevie. So that makes sense.
It's an interesting one. I don't know that Stevie would ever, or any of the sort of the really famous kind of fuzzy tones would have had something like the Deluxe with the volume quite low. I kind of feel like it's maybe not. So I'm interested to hear what this sounds like over the top of the Marshall. I mean, it's bucket loads of extra sauce, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So here we go. Here's Without.
Whoa! I've never.
That's the one. Well, I mean, that's a sound, right? I think you've just got to. I don't know. You've got to have an. I mean, we're running this on its 5-watt mode, and it's not even remotely dimed. So we've jumped the 2 channels, but again, we've got the volumes really low. It's crazy loud, but it's got that. I think it's a great pedal platform. We're stealing this, by the way, from the shop. It's going to live in here now. We've recently sort of fallen in love with these 2 little mini studio Marshalls. Perfect in here, not too loud, but really capturing the essence of those 2 era amplifiers. That's bonkers, isn't it? It does sound good. Anyway, but this is. Can you still buy these?
No.
So everything Texas, the Diaz pedals are all just eBay only, are they, or Reverb or whatever?
Sadly, yes. So and again, you want to look out for the Cesar Diaz signed ones, because they're about twice the price of the later production ones. So.
And you've got most of them.
Yeah. If you need, basically, if you want them, you've got to come to me. So.
Wow. Okay. Look. So we're finishing up then with the PedalPawn, which is your version of the square face, which was his version of the fuzz face. So that, I get it, right?
Yeah.
And you want this sort of like.
That's right. Yeah.
Like that. Okay. But we have the handy on-off like. I like that. But here's Without.
I'm trying to think what to play now. That one sounds better than all of them.
Brought to you in association with PedalPawn pedals that sound better than all of them. We're going to finish up this video now by chaining up the PedalPawn one, because of course Chris would love you to buy PedalPawn pedals, and they are great pedals, so please do, links below. And what I thought was the closest one, rather than necessarily my favourite one. So let's get a consensus in the room. We're probably going one of these 2, aren't we, guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Blue or red?
Red for me.
Red.
Yeah, I think red too. We're going to stay on the Marshall because definitely that is my favourite kind of. And I think, can we stay Jimmy rather than Stevie?
Yes.
We're going that kind of vibe.
What sort of like, should just like a slowish bluesy thing, or more of like a riff sort of thing?
Everything. The whole lot.
Okay.
And we're going pretty much everything. Not quite. I'm just going to back the fuzz down slightly on these two. This is all on 10. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you guys for watching. Links to all of these pedals will be below. If you are not already aware, Andertons sells thousands of pedals and guitars and amps. You can buy all them in the links below. And we'd love you if you did. What am I doing now? PedalPawn? I think I've said PedalPawn enough in this video. But if I haven't, PedalPawn. Let's go. Here's our Marshall amplifier with no pedals.